Good morning, folks. This will be my review of Monstertown by Bruce Golden. Hey, folks, this is the Premeditated Fiction channel on YouTube. I'm RJ Beam, and today I am reviewing Monstertown by Bruce Golden. Monstertown is a story. It's kind of a unique story here. I'm doing this, I did just finish reading it, but I'm also kind of making sure that I do this so that we're kind of honoring the fact that Halloween's coming up. And this is a detective mystery dealing with a private investigator who is looking at a crime in a community called Monstertown, which gets its name because in the world of this book, monsters are real. Frankenstein's monster, Dracula, the Wolfman, Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, they're all real people. And they're not actually monsters. They're just, like sideshow freaks. They're people who have some freaky condition going on. And instead of, being part of a circus sideshow, they live outside of Hollywood and they're movie stars, or they're minor movie stars. So all the movies that came out in the early age of the cinema in this story's realm, instead of makeup effects being used, they just hired freaks, people with real abilities. Though they're not like complete sideshow bearded women, fake freaks. They're really, Dracula's really an immortal person. Gargoyles are really stone creatures. So when Hollywood showed up or came about, they started casting these real people as real monsters. And so, they're really just nice people, and they're just misunderstood folks. But, Hollywood suddenly created backstories for them. I do apologize. Here in Wisconsin, our temperature has just changed, and so my sinuses are really acting up. So I do apologize for kind of my nasally going on. But anyhow, the story here with Monstertown, Dirk Slade is the main character. He is a war veteran, World War II veteran. The story takes place kind of in a 1950s era, kind of that cool little, hard-boiled noir kind of time frame. And he is a private investigator who had spent some time in the war and, went on to become a police officer. And throughout the story, they kind of sprinkle in some things where his time as a police officer, he had a really bad call. He ended up shooting somebody, and so due to issues with him being shot and shooting someone, he ends up leaving the police force and becomes a private investigator. And specifically, he works in Monstertown, which is kind of a small community outside of Los Angeles. It's almost like a little ghetto where all these freaks live. It's kind of like, society doesn't want to live next door to creatures like the Wolfman or Frankenstein's monsters. So instead, they have their own little town that is just kind of off in the suburbs, and, they keep themselves separate. There are some people who, walk both sides of the line, that they're normal human beings, but yet they associate more with monsters. Dirk, the main character in this book, is one of those folks. So the story begins with Dracula's son going missing. His son is a high school student, and he goes missing. He hasn't been around for a few days, so Dracula hires a private investigator to find his son because he doesn't trust the local police force. Dirk is on the case looking for his son. As he's working this case, he happens to hook up and meet up with one of his friends who's a local newspaper reporter. The reporter gives him kind of this cryptic message about not drinking the water. Dirk at first, is kind of uninterested with this message until the next day when his reporter friend is killed. And suddenly Dirk is wondering what's going on with his friend. Why did his friend get killed? The local police think it's just a mugging gone wrong. They just kind of write it off, And Dirk, of course, is like, no, I can't write this thing off. I got to find out. My friend was murdered. This is not a mugging gone wrong. So as he begins looking into his friend's death, he realizes there are some parallels with Dracula's son being missing. And so as he's looking at both these cases, he kind of goes back and forth throughout the story with information on both these cases and realizing that there are some connections. They're not completely connected, but there are some things that as the story goes on that as he's looking at one case, he gets a clue for the other case, and so you kind of get this A and B plot that run in parallel, but they never quite connect, but that they give you some reason for him to be moving forward. One of the things that I really enjoyed about this book, you've got the kind of the Who Frames Roger Rabbit mindset, where in like Roger Rabbit, you've got this Cartoonville where you have all these cartoons are real people. So you have all these different monsters in this book that are real people. And again, they're just kind of like, sideshow freaks. They're not really monsters. They're nice, everyday people. I mean, the Frankenstein monster is the local football coach, and he's known for telling really bad jokes. So, Dirk goes to talk to him, and, the Frankenstein monster, whose name is Frank, is sitting there and telling him some cheesy jokes. And you're just kind of like, what? But, as you're reading it, you're like, okay, this is a real world. This is a really flushed out world where, the author has really thought about what would these people be like if they did some movies, and now that there's makeup effects and they don't need freaks to play these characters anymore, what would they do? What would happen to people after their Hollywood career ends? What would they become? And so, some of them are regular teachers, some of them, are involved in crime. They're like little mafia lords. Some of them get involved in real estate and investing, and it's just kind of a fun little world that Bruce Golden has invented here. And I kind of hope that this is not the only story. It would be kind of interesting to see what would happen if there are other cases in this world. Again, I'm very sorry about my sinuses here. One of my favorite characters, he couldn't say the name, I imagine, because it's owned by Disney. But Tinkerbell is one of the characters in the story here. She's actually kind of Dirk's partner, unofficial partner. So this little fairy pops in and out. My kids really like Peter Pan. My kids are into the Jake and the Neverland Pirates, which is a Disney Junior show. And so reading some of the descriptions of Tinkerbell, and she's kind of a feisty little, I don't want to say dirty little person, but she makes some comments that are pretty raunchy. There's some comments about her that are kind of fun. So you read this at night before I went to bed, and then the next morning, I'm having breakfast and my kids are watching, a Disney thing, and Tinkerbell's there, and I just could not help but to laugh because I'm sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, when she's on screen, she's like this wholesome, fun, nice little girl, and then off screen she's like a dominatrix basically. Again, this is a made up story and whatnot, but it's just kind of it was just fun for me. It was just kind of like I couldn't help but to laugh. So really tight story though. Monster Town, it's just really good world building. As an author myself, I got to say this is one of those stories where it's like, man, I wish I would have wrote this. So if you're looking for something that's got a good Halloween theme, but also is a nice mystery, if you're a fan of mysteries and thrillers, check out Monster Town by Bruce Golden. All right, so this is Premeditated Fiction. I'm RJ Beam, and I will talk to you next time.